Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and hit that bell icon, so you never miss any of my future videos. Angular 17 introduced a new defer block that lets you lazy load content based on specific conditions or events. In this video, you will learn how to implement lazy loading using the new defer block in Angular 17. Deferrable views, also known as defer blocks, are a powerful tool that can be used to reduce the initial bundle size of your application or defer heavy components that may not ever be loaded until a later time. In order for dependencies within a defer block to be deferred, they need to meet two conditions. 1. They must be standalone. Non-standalone dependencies cannot be deferred and will still be eagerly loaded, even inside of defer blocks. 2. They must not be directly referenced from the same file, outside of defer blocks. This includes viewchild queries. Defer blocks have several sub-blocks to allow you to gracefully handle different stages in the deferred loading process. The content of the main defer block is the section of content that is lazily loaded. Let's implement defer block in Angular 17 app. I have already installed Angular 17. If you want to know how to install Angular 17, press the I button and watch the video. Open a new terminal. Click on Command Prompt. Now, type the command ngserve to run your app. In your browser, type localhost :4200 and press Enter. You can see the Angular 17 page with new Angular logo. Let's create post component. Click here and select Command Prompt. Now, type the command ng space g space c space post and press Enter. Here G is for generate, C is for component and post is the component name. You can see that all the files for the post component have been created. Now, open index.html file and add Tailwind CSS CDN before the head tag, as we will use Tailwind CSS for styling our app. In the post.component.ts file, define an array named posts, which contains 3 objects. Each object represents a post with various properties such as title, body, category, author, published date, and image. In the post.component.html file, I have added a template to display the posts. In the h1 tag we display the text recent posts. Here, we use for-block to display the post details such as title, body, category, author, published date, and image. First we display the post image. After the image, we display the post category. Then we display the post title. After the title, we display the post body. Then we display the author name. Lastly, we display the published date. In app.component.html file, I have added app post selector. In app.component.ts file, I have added post component in the imports array and imported the component. Now, open your browser, and you will see that 3 posts are displayed with titles, images, bodies, categories, published dates, and author names. Now, let's add defer block. Type at defer, followed by an open and close curly brace. Now add the app post selector inside the defer block. Open your browser. To see the effect of the defer block, open the developer tools. Here, select Fast 3G. Now, reload the page, and you will notice some delay before the posts load. Let's reload the page once more, and you will observe the same effect. Triggers provide conditions for when defer loading occurs. When a defer block is triggered, it replaces placeholder content with lazily loaded content. There are two options for configuring when this swap is triggered, on and when. Multiple event triggers can be defined at once. Idle will trigger the deferred loading once the browser has reached an idle state. This is the default behavior with a defer block. Let's add idle with the defer block. Add on idle in parentheses. Now, open your browser and reload the page. You won't notice any difference because this is the default behavior with a defer block. Now, let's see on timer. Timer would trigger after a specified duration. The duration is required and can be specified in ms milliseconds or s seconds. Let's use timer with the defer block. Replace idle with timer and add 3000 milliseconds in the parentheses. Here, we've used a 3000 milliseconds timer, so the post component will be displayed after a delay of 3000 milliseconds. Now, open your browser, and you will notice that the post component will be displayed after a delay of 3000 milliseconds. Let's add a button before the defer block. Open your browser, and you will see that the button will be displayed first since it is outside the defer block. After a delay of 3000 milliseconds, the post component will be displayed. Let's reload the page once more. You can see that the button is displayed first and the post component will be displayed after a delay of 3000 milliseconds. Let's see the next trigger, on interaction. Interaction will trigger the deferred block when the user interacts with the specified element through click or key down events. Replace timer with interaction and in parentheses, add load, which will be used as a template reference variable with the button. Add the template reference variable #load to the button. This indicates that first the button will be displayed, and the post component will be displayed only when we click on the button. Open your browser, and you will see that only the button is displayed, while the post component is not displayed. It will be displayed only when we click on the button. Now, click on the button and the post component will be displayed. Let's see the next trigger, on hover. Hover triggers deferred loading when the mouse has hovered over the trigger area. Events used for this are mouse enter and focus in. Replace interaction with hover. This indicates that first the button will be displayed, and the post component will be displayed only when we hover over the button. Open your browser, and you will see that only the button is displayed, while the post component is not displayed. It will be displayed only when we hover over the button. You can see that, after hovering over the button, the post component is displayed. Let's see the next trigger, on viewport. Viewport would trigger the deferred block when the specified content enters the viewport using the Intersection Observer API. This could be the placeholder content or an element reference. Replace hover with viewport. This indicates that, when the button enters the viewport, the post component will be displayed thereafter. Open your browser, and you will see that the post component is displayed only after the button enters the viewport. Let's see the next trigger, on immediate. Immediate triggers the deferred load immediately, meaning once the client has finished rendering, the defer chunk would then start fetching right away. Replace viewport with immediate and remove the parentheses and load. This indicates that it will display the post component when the page finishes rendering. Open your browser, and you will see that the post component is displayed only after the page finishes rendering. Now, let's see when condition. If you want to display the post component based on some logic, then you can use the when condition. Let's use the when condition with defer block. Open app.component.ts file. Declare a Boolean property named isLoading and initialize its value to false. Here, replace onImmediate with when isLoading, which means that the component will be loaded when the isLoading variable is true. Now, add a click event to the button and assign the showPosts method to be executed when the button is clicked. Define the showPosts method. This.isLoading equals not this.isLoading. This method will be used to change the value of isLoading from false to true when we click on the button. Open your browser, and you will see that only the button is displayed because the value of isLoading is false. When you click on the button, the value of isLoading will change to true, and only then will the post component be loaded. Reload the page. Click on Elements. Here, you can see that only the button is visible, whereas the post component is not visible. It will become visible only when we click on the button. Click on the button and you will see that now the post component is visible. If the when condition switches back to false, the defer block is not reverted. The swap is a one-time operation. If the content within the block should be conditionally rendered, an if condition can be used within the block itself. Now, let's see placeholder block. By default, defer blocks do not render any content before they are triggered. The @placeholder is an optional block that declares content to show before the defer block is triggered. This placeholder content is replaced with the main content once the loading is complete. The @placeholder block accepts an optional parameter to specify the minimum amount of time that this placeholder should be shown. This minimum parameter is specified in time increments of milliseconds, ms, or seconds, s. Comment out this button. Remove the isLoading condition along with the parentheses. Now, after the ending curly brace, add @placeholder along with opening and closing curly braces. After the placeholder, pass the parameter minimum 3000 milliseconds within the parentheses. This represents the minimum amount of time the placeholder should be displayed. Add the text, "Please wait," within the curly braces. This will be displayed as a placeholder. Open your browser, and you will see the placeholder text "Please wait" for 3000 milliseconds before the post component loads. Reload the page once more, and you will see the placeholder text before the post component is loaded. Let's display the skeleton component instead of the placeholder text. In your terminal, type the command ng -g -c placeholder and press enter. This command will generate the placeholder component. We will use this component to display the skeleton for the post component. You can see that all the files for the placeholder component have been created. Open placeholder.component.ts file. Here, I have declared an array named loading cards and assigned it a new array with a length of 3. In the placeholder.component.html file, I have added some Tailwind CSS classes to display the skeleton for the post component. Here, I have used a for block to display the loading cards. Comment out this code and add app placeholder selector. Open app.component.ts file and add placeholder component in the imports array and import it. Now, open your browser and you will see that the skeleton of the placeholder component is displayed for 3000 milliseconds before the post component is loaded. Let's reload the page once more and you will see the skeleton of the placeholder component is displayed for 3000 milliseconds and then the post component is loaded. You can also use the onTimer trigger with the defer block. By using onTimer trigger, the post component will be loaded after 3000 milliseconds, and until then, the placeholder block will be displayed. In parentheses, add onTimer and pass 3000 milliseconds as a parameter in the parentheses. Remove minimum 3000 milliseconds along with the parentheses. We forgot to add on with the timer. Here, you can see the lazy chunk files of the post component. Open your browser and reload the page. You will see that first, the placeholder block will be loaded, and then, after 3000 milliseconds, the post component will be displayed. Let's see the loading block. The loading block is an optional block that allows you to declare content that will be shown during the loading of any deferred dependencies. The loading block accepts two optional parameters to specify the minimum amount of time that this placeholder should be shown and amount of time to wait after loading begins before showing the loading template. Remove onTimer trigger. Now, replace placeholder with loading. Comment out the app placeholder selector. Uncomment this code. Change the text to loading. The loading block will be displayed while the defer block is loading. Open your browser and you can see the loading text is displayed while the post component is loading. Open Developer Tools. In Network tab select Slow 3G. Reload the page. You can see the loading text is displayed while the post component is loading. Reload the page once more, and you will see the same effect as before. Next block is the error block. The error block allows you to declare content that will be shown if deferred loading fails. The error block is optional. Type @error, followed by an open and close curly brace. Copy this code and paste it in the curly braces. Change the text from loading to failed to load. Open your browser and reload the page. You will see only the loading block. The error block will be shown only if deferred loading fails. We can also use multiple conditions. After the defer, within the parentheses, add onTimer 3000 milliseconds, semicolon, when is loading. It means that the post component will be displayed either after 3000 milliseconds or when is loading is true. Until then, the placeholder and loading block will be shown. Uncomment this code. Add placeholder block before the loading block. Copy this code. Paste it here and replace the text with "please wait." Open your browser and reload the page. You will see that first, it will display the placeholder block, then the loading block, and after 3000 milliseconds, the defer block is shown. Now, reload the page and click on the button. You will see that after loading the placeholder and loading blocks, the defer block will be loaded immediately without waiting for the timer. Now, let's see prefetching. Defer allows to specify conditions when prefetching of the dependencies should be triggered. You can use a special prefetch keyword. Prefetch syntax works similarly to the main defer conditions, and accepts when and or on to declare the trigger. Remove when loading with prefetch on idle. Open your browser and you will see that first the placeholder block will be loaded and then the defer block will be loaded. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel. I will see you in next tutorial. Till then, stay safe.